Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Student Body Right USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and as always, I am podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSPR is my Twitter handle. And then now we're talking about USC and losing again. Looking around these, I think in the last 21 games, he's 11-10. That's not up to anybody's standard as far as that goes, and he's not done a good job here with this football team for a long period of time now. I think 21 games is a pretty large sample size. I know that people are calling for his head and calling for people like Urban Meyer to come in and save the Trojans, if you will. But I just want to let me just squash the whole Urban Meyer thing real quick. Urban Meyer is one of the best football coaches in all of college football history. Urban Meyer, the human being, is not going to coach football anywhere ever again. So let's just get it out there. He's just not. He hit a player. He, left his team to go have a little powwow with allegedly with some young ladies. He just does some horrible things. And as far as just something that you wouldn't want, somebody in your son to do or whatever. At the end of the day, he's just not coaching the team. He's not coaching anymore. He's made enough money. He's a legendary figure. We know who he is. He's just not fit to be coaching football anymore, especially in today's age. It's not happening. But I think the biggest mistake, and we'll talk about it later in the week with Coach B, and Coach B was on this from day one, the non-dynamic aspect of Miller Moss. And I think he's clearly, and then we can talk about it left and right and upside and up or upside, downside, whatever. He's not a dynamic passer of the football. And he's not a guy who's going to be mobile. There's not a quarterback in his lineage as far as Raleigh goes to who's like Miller Moss. No, there's no pocket passer in his repertoire. All those guys can move because smartly enough, in today's football, sometimes the defense just gets it right. They do a great job in scouting and coverages, and they pick the right play, if you will. If you're a video game player, the guy just picks your tendency, and then nobody's open. And with that being said, you have a guy who can, like Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, who can make plays with their feet to keep drives alive. And that's not what Miller Moss does. And you might say, Dwayne, they scored 30 points against Penn State. Penn State hasn't given up, 30 points in a long time to any non-conference team. USC is in the same conference as them, but it's the first time they've played USC in a long time. So with that being said, my rebuttal to that is, it doesn't really matter, because when the game was on the line and, there's a lot of times where you have a lot of back shoulder plays that if he keeps the ball in bounds, Zachariah Branch can make a play. Jacoby Lane can make a play. All these guys can make plays, but the problem is he's throwing the ball out of bounds. On these pass interference plays in overtime, you're throwing the ball out of bounds. You got to give your guy a chance to make the play so maybe he can fight through that pass interference to make the play. They're not here. I'm not going to talk about conspiracy theories, but the Big Ten is not going to give the benefit of the doubt to the SC, especially when the Big Ten has an undefeated team like Penn State come into your town. There's the amount of questionable calls in this game were crazy, and a lot of them were against USC. But you're not going to get calls, even with all those calls, even with everything that went through, everything that happened in the game. Anthony Lucas getting hit in his legs on a block, and then USC getting penalized for any low block in this game because it was a point of emphasis for the officials. But there wasn't a point of emphasis the other way when Penn State did it. I mean, like, I get it. Like you can post those things on Twitter all day. When you drop back to pass with the game on the line, and I understand you're tired. I understand you've been through the whole thing. This wasn't a game where Miller Moss Miller Moss was getting beat up. It wasn't a game where Miller Moss was under duress. The offensive line played their best game of the year. You double down on your mechanics. You double down on everything. Lincoln Riley called the perfect play, and you had a 6'6" wide receiver wide open on an inside slant that would have given you an opportunity to win the game at regulation, at the horn, walk off. Everybody goes home happy in Los Angeles, and you overthrow Deuce Robinson. That is very like when he is standing up straight and when he's running his route, and in the corner, the defensive back is behind him, trailing him on that play. Yeah, you're talking about somebody who has a wingspan of like almost Kevin Durant style, wingspan. You can't overthrow that ball. Even with everything that happened, even with all the fourth down conversions by Drew Aller, the all-time game by the Dalton Kincaid game by Tyler Warren, you can't overthrow him. You can't overthrow him. You can't overthrow him in that situation. And Lincoln Riley got caught up in the the whole drama and the whole everything that went along with the Holiday Bowl. He brought Will Howard in for a reason. He brought in Jalen Mayava for a reason. Like this offense needs a guy who can move, and you can't move. He can't move, and this I think this game and this season currently is not even about the Penn State game because I could live with the Penn State loss. Penn State's a good team. They're gonna, eventually they're gonna start winning some big games. Now they have to go out and beat Ohio State when they play Ohio State for people to really believe in and to believe in Penn State. But for Lincoln Riley, this is more about the Michigan game and the Minnesota game. And what those games have in common is the fact that when there's critical points in the game, critical moments in these games, it seems like we're talking about the same guy. We're talking about Miller Moss, and we're talking about Miller Moss making giving up a critical turnover every time, a critical turnover. Michigan, the only thing at Michigan, as bad as the offensive line played, as bad as the first half was in that game, the only thing they couldn't do in that game was turn the ball over and give up 7 points on a turnover. He throws a pick six. You have totally taken over the game at Minnesota. You're up 17-10. You're driving for the nail in the coffin. Okay. The game is going to end. Once you go up 10 to 20 to 10 or 24 to 10, the Golden Gophers are cooked. The game's over. Interception, Miller Moss. With everything that happened in Minnesota, I mean, against Penn State, everything that happened in that game, it came out to and people want to kill Lincoln Riley for time management. Go ahead, it's fair game. I'm not here to protect Lincoln Riley. Just trust me, I'm not. But we talked about Miller Moss, and again, in a critical point in the game, he had at home a wide open 6'6" receiver. And all you gotta do is put the ball on him. And to Deuce Robinson's credit, he almost still caught that ball. But to overthrow him in that situation is just egregious and bad football. It's just bad football. You can't. It's just bad football. You just can't do it. You can't do it. I guess USC had one decommit, and then they ended up getting a defensive end. who's going to be in the 2026 class. So these kids are going to go where they're going to go. Like, it's not going to be recruiting. I think what this game showed to me is that, like, yeah, I mean, this Penn State, I think Penn State's probably better than USC, but at the end of the day, like, they can compete with anybody. Like, it's all this sport is no sport is about coaching more so than football, whether it's the pro level or the college level. They can compete with anybody, and they were right there with them. Like, there's not even a conversation. It's not even a conversation. They were right there in that game with them. Like, they should have put that game away. And I know they were up by 14. Once you give up the flag football touchdown to Warren, then everything that changes the game. I think if we can just knock that ball down, there's no reason why that ball shouldn't have been a PBU or an interception by Zion Branch. If you just make that play, I think they end up only giving up a field goal on that drive, because they were really, at that point, they're really resorting to anything to get points in that game because they were really struggling. But that throw, that moment is really the worst part of the game for USC, because that's a play where, when you make a play like that, and it's the worst. I mean, like, it's just, you cannot not make that play, and you can't. And then you don't even get a chance to do a Hail Mary. Like, so if the ball's incomplete there, and it's, you're in a situation where you have the ball at midfield, you got Jacoby Lane, you got Deuce Robinson. Maybe you can win on a Hail Mary after that ball falls incomplete. But of course, it's not incomplete. It's completely overthrown. It's tipped backwards, and then he doesn't make that throw. It doesn't complete the simplest of pass plays. He could not complete with the game on the line. And even before the game on the line, let's be real as well. Like, I mean, you can't, like, a lot of those balls down the field, he just did not connect with, and he just threw the ball out of bounds when his guys can make plays on the ball. Zachariah Branch he's a great athlete, can make plays on the ball. And Zachariah Branch, I'm not sure I don't want to put anything out there that's not, it could just be a bad situation. Maybe this quarterback just can't get him the ball. And that's really the reality of it. He just can't get him the ball. But Lincoln Ryan needs to find a way to get him the ball, and I don't know why that's a struggle. I don't know what the issue is with that. I mean, all these teams are not. You're not gonna tell me all these teams have, the greatest group of cornerbacks ever, and then you can't find a way to get the ball to Zachariah Branch. And I understand, like, he may not be like the route runner that Makai Lemon is, or somebody else on the Trojans are, but you got to get that done. And, Link, I know people are coming to the defense of Lincoln Riley, and he's not going anywhere because USC is not buying him out for $70 million. It's not happening. No matter how much money they get from the Big Ten, they're not losing. They're not going to use that money to buy out Lincoln Riley. Especially when there's really no clear replacement. There's some hot names out there here and there. I mean, you can look at the Penn State offensive coordinator. You can look at a guy like the UNLV head coach, things like that. But you're not going to blow up your whole recruiting, blow up that whole defensive staff that you paid all this money for just to go fire Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley has to figure it out. Like, yeah, figure it out. I mean, he's been fraudulent, and I know he's been fraudulent so far. And after year one, they've been terrible. And the only way that he can really bounce this back, I think likely the likely outcome of the season, that he ends up with the same 7-5 record that he had last year. But to me, the only game left now that they probably won't be favored in would be the Notre Dame game. They're going to be favored in every game they play. I mean, Rutgers. I mean, you got teams that got shut out. That's on their schedule. Rutgers got shut out the other day. I believe 28-0. You got Northwestern beat who Northwestern beat again? No, Northwestern beat Maryland like 30 something, 35 to 20, 35 to 10 or something like that. Like, those are kind of teams you have on the schedule left. So if they go play when they go play Maryland and they fly across country to go there, and if they can't win that game by 3 scores, then I just don't. I mean, I don't know what's going on. But for them to have some semblance of success and have some way of holding their head high. I don't know if they can get to, they can't get I don't think they can get to 9-3, but I mean, at least at the very first, at the very, you know, the worst situation would be 8-4. They got to get to at least that because this has been a it looked like a daunting task at the end of at the beginning of the season, but as the way the schedule played out, you know, 5-1 is really like at the very least they should have been able to pull off that record. And I think they have to start this week in Maryland and show that they can actually win a Big Ten road game. You know, and don't worry about the officials, don't worry about all the other stuff, but they gotta win. They gotta win some of these games, and they gotta get Zachariah Ranch to the football and get some snaps because it doesn't make any sense. And like I said, you have to get a big lead. You have to do those things in these teams and put these teams away because if the game is on the line and it's close, it is Miller time. But that Miller time is going to be one where he's going to turn the ball over and lose you the football game because it's not one time, it's not two times, it's the third time he's had a big time moment to just be make the good decision, and he's completely shit the bed and turned the ball over. And this time it's with a clean pocket. So for those who Miller Moss he just needs a clean pocket. He just needs protection. That was the best offensive line performance that USC has had in 2 years. Forget about this year, just in 2 years. So, all right, Trojans. It got worse, and hopefully USC gets better. Down the stretch here, they're playing some lesser opponents. The next really good team they play is the last game of the year against Notre Dame. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Trojans, fight on.